I'm going to start recording. Everybody's here. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Hope everybody's not too hungover from Cinco de Mayo. It is May 6th, and we're going to do something a little different today with a little bit of some of the other stuff and a little new. We're going to do a week in review. We're going to look at some of the action we saw this week, some of the option flow around after earnings play specifically, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and we're going to pull up charts and go through the different charts you guys want to take a look at on here. So hope you guys stick around for the next hour or so, and we'll get going here. You can type questions in. We'll try to answer them. Hold off on your chart requests until we get to that portion, please. I don't want to be overwhelmed trying to come back here. You guys can do that for me. All right. So our disclaimer, day trading, short-term trading, options trading, and futures trading are extremely risky undertakings that generally are not appropriate for someone with limited capital, little or no trading experience, and a low tolerance for risk. Never execute a trade unless you can afford to and are prepared to lose your entire investment. All trading operations involve serious risk, and you can lose your entire investment. No trades are recommendations or advice, and we cannot be sued for losses of capital. All trades are for educational purposes only. Contact your broker or RIA for execution margin and other capital requirements. Everyone watching presentation adheres to all disclaimers from Option Hacker, AlphaSharks.com, and me, Mike Mazzani. All right, so much for the legal stuff. Let's go have some fun, guys. So again, we're going to look at the first weeks in the books in May, take a look at what we've seen here. Post-earnings review, I like to look at post-earnings options flow. That tells me where can I possibly expect the stock to move based upon the earnings afterwards. Look at a couple of really unusual option calls into this week, and then guys, it's up for you. Your chart, so start thinking of what things you might want to look at. All right, so that's the SPY as of last night on the close. So the good news is most of the major players have reported. We're starting to get into the end of earnings season. Earnings season never really seems to end anymore. It just kind of goes on and on. But a lot of the guys I know a lot of us like to play have reported at this point. They're done. Most of the high beta names are done. We do have a bunch of semis coming up and a couple of biotechs still lagging and retail stocks. But for the most part, we've seen a lot of things report, including banks. The real good news is the Fed is behind us from this week. No real surprise to me. They were slightly hawkish, pretty much setting up for a rate hike next month, which I think is what we wanted to hear. And you know, we don't have to deal with these guys now for another 5 or so weeks, which is a blessing, right? I think we all get tired of listening to the Fed and having to listen to them over and over again. I know I do. Happiest when they're not talking. The banks, though, are still in limbo, and that was kind of the surprise, guys. We had the job report yesterday, and it was a good report, right? And you know, yesterday's candle on the SPY, you look at it, it looks great. It was a weird day. There was no volume until the last 90 minutes. We were well below. I think we're on pace for our lowest day of the year, coming up into the 230 area when a first buy program ran, and that seemed to trigger a bunch of algorithmic buy programs that triggered volume into the end of the day. Very clear to see it on a 5-minute chart. But the banks didn't participate. I would have thought on a good jobs report the banks would have gotten more involved. So I was a little bit surprised there as well. We do have the French elections tonight, this weekend. I don't think the market really cares based upon what I saw. I didn't see a lot of hedging and protection coming in, which of course this probably means this will be the one that drags us down. And the other big news was crude became a big headwind for the markets this week as it continued to sell off. Market had been largely ignoring crude, but it started to take more notice of this week as it started to break the key 47 level. So SPY just missed closing at an all-time high. It's really close here. After hours, it was way up. The futures market was way up this last night. So we'll have to see if that holds or not. Okay, crude, guys. So why am I worried about crude? And I've been talking about this in the room a lot the last week and a half. Crude was starting to look all good, right? We came in, if you look up here when we had this 40.55 number, we put highs in, there was a lot of bullish sentiment in crude, and they flushed it out nicely down here. And down here, it looked like they had flushed it out enough, looked like they were starting to get people in and squeeze the shorts, and then we just rolled over. And we really rolled over in the last 2 sessions. And we broke 47, which was right here, this key area, which was right 47 area. And that was a big area to lose. On Thursday in the afternoon, we saw was it Thursday? Wednesday in the afternoon, we saw a big buyer of the June 950 puts came in, 160,000 contracts. Guy came in on Thursday at another 40,000 to them, over 200,000 from the same player. And what we saw on Friday, and you can see them here, I have them up in the open interest for you. You can see they're still there. He hadn't closed them out as of yesterday. He still has them open. We saw yesterday capitulation volume in oil. And what I mean by that is there was a liquidation event that happened when the oil opened overnight, and we saw a quick drop and spike in volume. Somebody got liquidated out, and a big reversal. So now we have a reversal hammer. So this is something now to keep an eye on as we go into the next weeks. Our candle enlarges. These are in a PowerPoint here right now, but we can look at them in a different chart later on. So oil is something to watch to see if this continues to be a headwind as we go into the next couple of weeks, or if the bottom's in here on that candle. So something to keep an eye on. The VIX. VIX is really in la-la land, guys. I mean, I've heard people say the VIX is broken. I keep people saying, I'm going to buy the VIX. I'm going to buy this thing because it kind of can't go any lower. Look at how low it's been historically low down here. And that blue line represents an area where the VIX does not like to be below yet. If you look for the last 2 weeks, we are just staying below it and not coming back. And this is kind of really unusual. Thanks, Mark. Yep. So this is kind of unusual. People saying I'm going to get a long VIX for a big trade. Personally, I don't touch the VIX. If I'm going to trade it, I'll trade it with the UVXY or the VXX. And I'll get into it when I see a reason to get into it. Right now, they're not doing anything with it. There's really no reason to really seeing it going into there. The question, that buyer, it was on Wednesday. It was in the afternoon sometimes. I don't remember exactly where it was trading. I have to go look it up on the 9.5 EOSO puts. So the VIX is telling us there's no fear in this market, and there continues to be no fear in this market. Although for the first time in a long time, the Bollinger Bands are wide, and it has a lot of room to move in either direction. So to go along with that, I look at the oscillators all throughout the week to see where we're at. And you can see we're just stuck in these neutral areas. We're having a hard time getting any kind of good signal in either direction here. You know, every time we start to get up, the NYMOT, which is on your left, and it's, you know, we see we're just stuck right in that neutral area. The NAMOT on the right, you can see we started to get a spike. That was on all Apple moving and everything moving up back about a week ago. And see, everything's just come right back to neutral. We're not getting a good oversold or overbought indicator on these things. They're just kind of moving around here, which is okay, which means we can go either way. All right, so some post-earnings plays that I want to take a look at here. So first off, Facebook had earnings this week. Earnings were not bad, not great. They were decent, but they weren't for a stock that had run as much as this one's had. They were a little short of expectations. I think they were priced for perfection. But here's the thing: the chart is still holding the 8-day, so this is telling me there's still a lot of momentum. They're oscillators, Arthur. One is for the NASDAQ, one is for the New York Stock Exchange, the NYMOT and NAMOT. It tells you whether things are overbought or oversold. So on Facebook, it tells me that holding this, the weakness was bought, holding the 8-day, that there's still momentum in this name. The other thing is we started seeing some large call buyers come in. So on 5-4, first guy that came in was in August 170, a large block, not a sweeper, a large block came in, but he lured a huge block of 170 calls. And then a little later on, we saw another guy come in and buy a big block of December 150 calls. So we're seeing that the market is in Facebook, that somebody's saying that this thing's going higher into the end of the year. Is this actionable right now? No, but it tells you right now that there's a big player or two involved in this name that are bullish on the name still. They're just buying time. And for me, if it can hold the 8-day here on Monday next week, I'd look for an entrance here, maybe for a move back to that 153 level or a little higher. I've done that in another webinar, Shams. Those are the ATR trailing stop. And I'm going to do a webinar on that again coming up. I'll repeat that webinar in a little bit. I've been trying to give you guys some different looks at this point, but it's an indicator that shows areas of support on different time frames. So on the daily support, there should be support where those blue dots are right now coming in for Facebook. Netflix. I know guys are loving Netflix. So Netflix on Friday showed us a small sign of exhaustion after it hit a new all-time high. However, I thought that gap up was fake. It was contrived. And if you guys know why it was contrived, type it in. Let's see if you guys are paying attention on Friday. Anybody? Okay, so what happened on Friday, Thursday night is that Citi came out, and no, it was worse. Citi came out and put an article out of why Apple should buy Netflix, is buying Netflix at $220 a share, and they put a 40% chance upon it. Again, this is an analyst view. There was nothing behind that. So the stock gapped up before people really got their chance to take a look at it on low volume, as you pointed out, Randy, very low volume. And things like that are often contrived. That's an analyst or somebody trying to get the stock higher to maybe dump some shares into that price. So sure enough, it opened at its high and quickly reversed and came in and spent most of the day coming down, but no real damage done. Interesting more to me here, it's still above everything. It's not far off of the all-time highs. And we've seen two big buyers of this thing after earnings. The first one was on the 19th. And on the 19th, the stock looked horrible, right? On the 19th, the stock was down in this area here. It was in the lower part of this area. Came in, he bought a huge order of the 145, August 145 calls. And then we saw on 425, another player come in and buy July 160 calls. Those are still in open interest. The guys haven't closed them. So these guys are still looking to play more. So you have some big players in there. We saw some momentum sweepers this week, and those are just small buyers, usually in weeklies or short time frame, but nothing huge. Still tells me there's still momentum in Netflix at this point. So Apple is really interesting after yesterday, right? So the initial weakness was bought right back on earnings. They missed on revenue. Their phones were light, but they killed it on earnings per share, and their guidance was very good. So on the 3rd, right afterwards, we saw a small but notable sweeper into the July 165 calls. And then it kind of went sideways. It held the 8-day this whole time, right? Came down just about tagged the 21-day on after earnings day. Held the 8-day into the close. Held it again on Thursday. Then yesterday around 11:20 in the morning, we started seeing an explosion of sweepers coming into the name. First one went off into next week's 148 calls. Then around noon, we had October 150 calls were hit. $1 million sweeper came in. The 526 150 calls got hit with a big sweeper, and then at 1 o'clock, might have been the same player, but the October 150 call sweeper came back with another hit of $700,000 onto it. Apple went out at highs. If you look on a 5-minute chart, the afternoon, it didn't really do much. So somebody's coming in still expecting a decent move on these things. A sweeper is a player who comes in and he sweeps across multiple exchanges, trying to get filled as quick as possible. So that's somebody who wants those options and they want them bad. Those are the most bullish. That's what we're looking for. So the reason we look at post-earnings, again, post-earnings options plays, earnings you can't tell, right? People can say to you, well, oh, look at all these puts coming on this name just before it's going to have bad earnings. They don't know. I mean, people don't know. I've seen it go every direction possible on earnings plays with option activity. But afterwards tells you what the big players really think. So when they come in afterwards where they're aggressive in their name, it tells you that there's players think that this stock is either going up or down depending upon what they're doing. So that's why I'm showing you some of these from this last week and some of the plays we've seen in it. So Amazon's been really interesting. It's been a name I've been looking to get back involved with again this week, and I was hesitant all week to get into it. But finally tagged the 8-day, which is something I've been watching for. Did it yesterday. Closed just a little bit above it, not much. And we saw yesterday, and the stock was much higher. So just shortly after the open, a sweeper came in, small, but he drilled the 942.50 calls for next week. And I think he bought about 350 of them or so. So not big, but there's big money behind it. Good size money, good chunk of cash. And this is notable to me because Amazon doesn't catch a lot of guys like this. They don't catch a lot of call sweepers. So when you see somebody coming into a big name like this, usually it's a sign they're going to be buying it. They know something, they're going to be buying it, or they're expecting some type of upgrade or something going on. So the stock kept coming down after this player bought in, and you will see that a lot, guys. These players don't care if they hit the bottom. You know, sometimes they'll nail it, but sometimes they'll just come in. So it's something worth watching for next week based upon that flow. Just keep an eye on it. It's a good entrance point off the 8-day as well. So Google yesterday showed us some first time of any type of exhaustion in this name in about a month, right? It's had a hell of a run. It's way extended. I think the RSI in this thing was approaching 90, maybe 90 has something higher. This thing was very oversold. I always use the 8 and the 21 are EMAs, guys. I always use for my fast moving averages EMAs. Again, the rest are simple moving averages, the 50, 100, and 200. Always, always, always. That's how I like to look at things. So here's what stood out to me in Google yesterday. Somebody came in. At first, I thought it was a call buyer, and they bought a big chunk, about $1.5 million worth of the 10-20 calls. But then somebody came. They nailed the thousands as well. When I looked at it, they opened a large call spread. Somebody opened a very bullish January 2018 1,000 by 10-20 call spread. So they're capping it. They're reducing their risk because of the cash outlay. But again, that's a nice big move somebody's still expecting in Google. So any weakness there, I think, is looking something to get back involved in this name. I don't know if I can buy it here. It's extended. It's not a name I'm looking to get into way up here, but it's something I would certainly keep my eyes on. And if the markets are weak, this could be a nice, cute short down to the 930 area. Connect with that 8-day. Scott, it is possible. I mean, when you bring it, Scott's saying that it could be someone long the stock and selling that spread, but it looked clean, Scott. You know, sometimes it'll show us tied. It looked clean. There was no big blocks of stock that went off around it. It looked clean to me. That's why I bring it up. I know there's a lot of that, and you're right. You know, we always have to interpret intent. So I'm trying to give you what I saw on it. All right, so let's talk about FireEye here. So FireEye actually finally had good earnings. I mean, God forbid it actually has good earnings. I mean, this thing's been down forever. And so what we saw is it acted differently. Instead of giving it back, it held in, and then on the close, 5-4, literally like within seconds of the close, a sweeper came in and drilled the 1350 calls for May. And then opened up yesterday. It gave you a chance to get in. It was flat for a while. And then if you look, there was no big call buying in it, but the IV, and that's the implied volatility, on all the May calls started jacking. And then, you know, before the move started. And if you look here, I put up the chain, you can see the volume. There was good volume coming into these. So people were buying. The market makers were jacking the IV because they weren't sure what was going on here. All I knew, there was a lot of call buying coming in, and they were coming from a lot of different sources. They jacked it, and you got a nice move out of it up to this 1489 level. So real nice move in FireEye. The option flow really helpful there, dictating where it's going to go. And that stick, I think a lot of that's going to stick to open interest. And if that does stick to open interest, then I think you have a bigger move coming in FireEye. Arthur, why do I use the EMA and SMA on the same chart? Because I have my fast moving averages are my 8 and 21. So I want the EMAs. I think I like the simple moving averages because I think the institutions use them more. And for the bigger moving averages, the ones that are bigger, I like to use them. It's personal preference, bud. Use whatever you'd like. Just stick to it. That's the only thing I would say. You know, you don't have to use what I use or what any other trader uses. Just figure out what you like and use it, and just understand it and be comfortable with it. Some people use the 10-day. Some people use, seen people use the 5-day. I mean, to me, the 5 is just too much noise. But that's me. All right, here's my diverter. Moving on here. So, unusual flow for this week. How many people here in the room heard about GEMO or got involved in it, or that are here today? Anybody? Yeah. Yes, nice. So GEMO on 5-3 before the stock started to move, I think I was looking to get involved in it at 31.10. Somebody came in and twice tagged the July 35s calls and opened the largest position of open interest in the name. All right, that was on this first green bar right here. And it didn't do a lot at first. It was very slow moving, but it ground its way and it got into this big gap you guys see here, right? See the gap that's there? Then it had another nice move on Thursday, and then yesterday this thing just exploded, took off. No, Arthur, no problem. I'm always here to answer questions, buddy. I will absolutely answer them. Took off, and here's the danger. Momentum sweepers started pouring in this thing yesterday late afternoon in the final hour as it's running into that gap fill about 36. So this is where you have to ask yourself, you got to be careful chasing the end move here. You know, this is a name that would have paid you nice with common or with options, right? You could have bought 1,000 shares and you could have gotten a $3.3, $3.5, $4 move on this thing through yesterday. Would have been a nice big trade. The options are not that liquid on this name, so you're playing tough with it, but you don't always have to trade options, guys. I will point that out. You can trade common stock off this flow. I've done it, I do it a bunch, especially in some of these names that don't have liquid options. So people kept asking me, why aren't you buying more? Why aren't you sweepers coming in? Because the last momentum sweepers are usually wrong. Not saying these are in this case, but when you're nearing a point of a gap fill and you had a move like this, you shouldn't be chasing the last little sweepers into it. But what a move, right? Because if you were with us in the room, you would have saw this. We called this out, and you could have jumped on this early on. Here's one the room did not pick up. I picked up. It was Merck. I had to point out. Merck yesterday afternoon suddenly had an explosion of sweepers. The two notables were the first one was at 220. He brought next week's 6450 calls, and then between 245 and 3, they went out to May and they started sweeping the 6450 calls there multiple times. And we just saw a lot of little orders coming in. They kept coming in small. They weren't big, just small. Now, the only caveat I'm going to give you guys, and Merck hasn't really moved off that, right? You can see Merck has a lot of room here, especially if it clears this area right where it's coming into. This thing could run up to 65 or higher quickly. Earnings were good on it. Something you guys should have on your radar. It does have an event next week. I believe on the 11th, they're expecting data results for a cancer drug. So somebody could be playing into that. So with these pharmaceutical companies, you got to be aware. But it could run up into that. So it's worth a play into that. Just get out of the way before that, unless you want to take that risk, right? And that's your call. I don't try to play these events because I don't know what they're going to be. Any questions on some of the stuff I've showed you guys so far? You guys finding this interesting, helpful? Seeing how some of this flow comes in after earnings, especially, and what it can be done with. So go ahead and start piping some charts that you'd like to look at in there. We'll start pulling them up. I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts before you guys start putting your charts in. So this week, to me, there was no still notable sign of big signs of rotation. And the one thing that continues to be a little concerning to me is they keep playing in the same names. How long can Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Tesla, how long can these couple names hold the market up? We need rotation, and I've been watching for the financials. I think there's been some good news there. We haven't seen anything yet there. Yeah, Joseph, sorry about that. I think Andrew forgot to change the name. So we'll go to that. So there's no charts buying the financials. We saw some small buying into energy yesterday afternoon, but it was all towards the end of the year and nothing. And even biotech, which I thought maybe we start picking up a bit here, nothing. So with that, guys, I'm going to turn this over to your charts, and I'm going to pull it up here, and we can start going through them. And the rest of the webinar is for you. Okay. All right, so first one I saw, somebody asked Tesla. I knew Tesla was going to come up, right? So first thing on Tesla. I know I have a lot of stuff on here. There's a couple gaps it has down below. On Thursday, in the late in the mid-morning, somebody came in and bought the 290 calls, in the money calls expiring on Friday. They nailed the bottom. They later rotated into the 302.50s on Friday morning after the stock was way up, and then late in the day they actually rolled them out into next week's I think 310s. taking a lot of profits every time along the way. So what do I make of Tesla here, guys? So we're post-earnings. There was no big call. The reason I didn't put Tesla as one of the ones post-earnings, there was no big flow. It was all short-term, most of it expiring yesterday. So we came down hard. We kind of held the area where you wanted to, this area. Pull it up, I'll annotate. So we closed right here, right on that area of support. We held it, we took back the 21-day, and we closed right on the 8-day. So to me, Tesla now is, see what they do. Look for call buying, see how it handles the 8-day. The 8-day had been support through this run. Is it now resistance? And that's what we got to see here, right? So that's Tesla. I like the idea of it. We'll see how it handles. I think it's a good long or short off this area depending upon how the action is. All right, trying to get to where I was. LVS, yeah, LVS. So LVS, there was a ton of put buying that came into it. Yesterday, and it bounced quickly off that area. And there was a story being circulated that they were being investigated for money laundering in China. And the put buying kept pouring in, but the stock bounced and went green. And my understanding is there's supposed to be some type of press release from China later this week, Randy. So I don't know how to play this. It's an event. That said, take that aside. If it's a non-event, the stock looks great. It looks poised to run from here. If it's bad, I would think it can come down, at least test this 55.50 area down through here, maybe even lower if it really gets bad. Depends on what it is. SRPT. SRPT, we had a nice call buyer in that last week, and it got my attention because these guys are usually right. And since the guys bought calls, it's done nothing but go down. At this point, all biotech seems to be struggling here. It got sold off pretty hard yesterday. So I don't know. It has a double top here. We got a double top here, right? We can see that clearly just around that 40 area, just below it. You have support, maybe even you got a rising, basically you could actually call this a series of higher lows coming into it. At this point, it's broken back below the 200-day. It's below all the fast-moving averages. I would see if it can come down and retest this line if it really wants to. It seems to like to come down and test it. TTWO. Take two. So I think they got a boost based on being bought out by Apple as well from that Citigroup, and I think they're actually more of an actual candidate for that. So lovely chart, beautiful chart. If you're in it, it's giving you no reason to get out of it, right? Look at the moving averages. Just moving straight up through here. That said, look at the RSI coming up on 80. It's into an area that's been overbought for a while now and holding it. Big money in a CMF indicator, which I like to look at, guys, is staying in it and staying long. I wouldn't be buying it up here, but I would be buying dips on this name as it seems to have liked it. It hasn't done anything but break below. It hasn't really done anything but break below the 50-day. And the 50-day is support, huge support for it, so I'll see what it does from here. Gold or silver? Yeah, Keith, so gold, geez, God, I mean, gold is just, it's being used here as a hedge, right? Gold, the metals are being used as a hedge. Do I even have it anymore? Let's just go type it in. And, it's kind of like the VIX. It's kind of broken here. It moves up when there's a little bit of worry coming into something like the French elections the first time, and when that went fine, it came right back down. You can see it has maybe a channel here, right? You can have maybe a defined channel if you want to take a look at it. I don't have any positions in gold right now. The reason being is I'm just not looking to play in this area. I don't think there's anything, unless something happens out there, I don't think there's a good long-term play here. You can try buying it towards the bottom of this channel here, if you really like the play. I have really no position or interest in it right now. Jazz, Gilead, and BMY. Nice names. So Gilead, what caught my attention this week is it had earnings, and earnings were horrific. I mean, again, just bad. However, this was earnings day right here. They did mention, hinted at M&A activity on the call, and immediately on this day, they came in and they were buying the December 70s multiple times with size, Jazz. So Gilead is on my radar because somebody's coming in and trying to call a bottom here. They're willing to go out and buy it. The only reason that keeps me out of it right now is this name has failed every time they bought calls on it of late. So it's certainly something worth watching. What's the other one you want to take? A BMY, another name that saw a ton of call buying. Sideways in the channel here. It needs to retake and hold the 200-day for me, Jazz. If it can't do that, institutions aren't going to be heavily involved in it. So once it can get above the 200-day and hold it, you'll see institutional buying, and then if it gets some buying into it, it could probably move fairly quickly up to that gap. So if there's some good news on it or something, you see the gap still up here? Never filled that gap. Actually, never even finished filling this gap. So if you get some excitement in the names and good call buying, you see volume come into it, I would play it up to first this gap at 58, filling that gap up to 59.50, and then see if you could really get something going on it. Yuri. Oh man, you got United Rentals. We have any support? So, Ruth, Yuri, I would watch for maybe an entrance down here. See if it can hold. It's oversold. Look at RSI, right? It's in an oversold area. It still hasn't retaken the 8-day. It has support here. And this line, you can move it up to here if you want, right? You could, throw that line how you want it there. So you can say it came into support and it held here and it looks kind of good. So something I would certainly keep my eye on there. I think maybe support, especially if you can get some volume, retakes the 8-day, then you can get a move and see if you can go higher. EA. Did they have earnings yet? Not from, I don't remember if they did or didn't, guys. I think they did. Anyway, beautiful move here on this move here. Holding the 8-day, this chart's been a winner. Overbought, has volume. Money came pouring back in the last couple of days. You see that on the CMF indicator down here. It's blue sky country, so it can run. So if I'm along it, I'd hold it. Nice look to it. Priceline, oh God, somebody had to ask about that. So Priceline, I mean, it has earnings this week. It's had an incredible move up to this 1900 area at this point. I look at it just to see if the market, I'm using it as an indicator right now. I can't touch it. That said, if they announce some type of stock split, this thing can go nuts. But Priceline, it's beautiful up here. I wouldn't short it ahead of earnings at this point unless the market sells off. I wouldn't be looking to get long it. And buying Fox, I don't know, bro. We hear these rumors all the time. So hard for me to say whether somebody's looking to buy it or not, man. Really is. The whole sector got drilled this week, right? All the media outlets got drilled. TAC. I have no idea what these guys do. So what do I like about this chart? It had bad news here. Something got this thing going yesterday. So I don't know why you're in it or what you're looking for. I don't know enough about it. I have to research that. So, this is why I'm being a little bit more difficult, a little bit hesitant with it. That said, that there on decent volume is an igniting bar. It took all the moving averages back. It held this area well as support. So if you're in it now, I like it. I don't know what the news is, so you'd have to tell me what the news was on, or what sparked this event. Obviously something sparked this. Does that make sense? Chart looks good here. Tree taking these back. If it can hold here, I think you'll try to push back up. CMG, thank you. So CMG yesterday was a beautiful thing of beauty. I've been waiting for this thing, wrong chart, weekly. Go to the daily. So CMG, I've been waiting for this thing to come in, and waiting and waiting and waiting. I thought it might hold the 8-day, it didn't. Came all the way down, tagged the 21-day yesterday and reversed and went green. I should have bought it yesterday. This wasn't in the, I didn't buy it. It's on my radar for along this week. It tends to like to do that. It's been holding the 8-day, this hold run. First time we saw any weakness, but it held the 21-day. I think they tried to shake out a bunch of longs in this one. They came up here, they sold into strength. You see the CMF indicator came down, and now they're starting to go back up. So I think they tried to get everybody out, and they're starting to go long. I like this thing. I still think this thing tries to go back to this 490, 500 areas. I'm looking to buy May 490s or June 500 calls for a bigger move. Arthur, why do I use stock charts? It's a nice, easy way to post charts out there so I can share them with you. It cost me a couple, like 15, 16 bucks a month. I can put nice little drawings, do research on it, change my things around easy without having to change my studies and indicators on my trading platform. And it's a great, easy way for me to share this stuff with you guys. That's why. And my mouse just froze. Come on. There we go. NVIDIA. NVIDIA has been tough, right? NVIDIA has been real tough. I am not long NVIDIA. I've looked to get long it, but started to look good, came back into the gap, looked like it was going for a gap fill, then AMD earnings came down, and it is doing nothing in here. It has earnings on the 9th, Bach. So I'm looking that maybe this thing can run back up into earnings and try to fill this gap. Maybe we can get an earning run on it. It has strong support on this double bottom area down around 95.50. So that area has become very strong support for it. While, yeah, this webinar is recording. Thank you. I did remember this time. Penn, Microsoft. Jazz, Penn, another one I saw unusual option activity yesterday. Penn is typically a grinder, though, not a name I look at for options. But at this point, look at this move. So it had this huge move and has put in a big flag, and somebody came in and bought a bunch of calls on it here, saying they think it's going to go higher. So it's a nice flag. So you can stay and say, I'm going to be long it versus the 21-day, because the 21-day looks like it's some support here if you want to get involved in it. Microsoft, I hate that stock. This thing moves and grinds and grinds, and it doesn't get a lot of movement, and then you have to just wait for it and stay in it forever. From a technical perspective, Microsoft looks great. Earnings weren't great, but it was good enough. They bought it. They sold back, but it's held the 8-day, and we've been seeing sporadic call buying going out into the 70s on this thing as we're going forward here. So Microsoft looks good. It's a little bit overbought, so they might be letting it cool off. It's not a name that typically gets very overbought, Jazz. AS, I just write them down, or just an Excel spreadsheet and put them in there. That's, I keep a little system of it so I can go and search through them, AS. So Finisar, Lou? Yeah, Finisar had so first thing that happened on Finisar, there was an algo sweeper that came in, and then the rumor hit. And then they bought some calls out a little further in time on it going out. But nothing big, nothing huge. We see buyout rumors on Finisar all the time, Lou, so it's hard for me to get really excited on that one. Make sense? Of course, that'll probably be the big winner. GWPH. Again, pharma's just been out of play. It's just, other than Regeneron, most of it hasn't been doing much here. That said, it's had 2 big engulfing down days and is back under the 200-day here and looking really weak at this point. We like to try to buy weakness and sell strength. So if I look here, it has some support here. It has, you know, maybe some more support a little lower, and I can even say there's some support through this area. So if it wants to hold, this is a decent place for it to hold. It's in a down channel here. It needs to kind of break out of it. It needs a catalyst. Twitter had a lot of option activity. So here's the thing for Twitter for me. So Twitter, complete change in character on earnings this time. We gapped up and we held it. And then they kept pushing it higher, and then we have another gap here now. And then you had the Mark Cubans coming into it, and we've seen this huge move. Where's my Twitter chart? Why am I typing it in? I got Twitter chart somewhere. All right, so I put this out there the other day. It's hit my first target. My first target, it would fill this earnings gap, this big gap that it had from the last earnings down. It's done that. It's heated. Look at RSI at 84. It's extended the 8 days all the way down here. This is not where you want to be buying Twitter. Not today, anyway. Now, the good news is Twitter coming into this move had an 18% of its float was held short. So if they want to, they can squeeze and they can really heat this thing up. A good buyout rumor would do that. My hope, I'm looking for is maybe some pullback, a little sideways action. Then we look for a move up to 1975 area, which is target 2. And then see, it's going to need something big to really get going. This is pie in the sky way down the road. So right now I think it's had the bulk of its move at this point. WFT, another one. You know, it's an energy name, beaten up, looks horrible. We had an uptrend here. You know, you had your uptrend, it got broken. You have a sharp sell-off coming down now. It's below all the moving averages. It's extended. It's oversold to the downside. It's trying to put a base in here. It has some support through this area. You got a bunch of pivots in this area that maybe it'll try to hold. Hard to say. Through this area, I don't know. They came after with call buying last week. It didn't work. See if they come back for more after it came lower. Boeing, however, looks fabulous. It's on my list for next week. I was looking at that earlier today. So Boeing had really good earnings. And what do I see here? I see a cup and handle, guys. And it looks like it's getting ready to go. All right, nice little high-level cup. Here's your little handle, all right? And you just broke above it. You're breaking above it here. So Boeing looks like it's poised to go a lot higher to me, Kevin. I like the look of this chart. Looks nice here. Not oversold. Money is flowing in the CMF indicator. So I really like this one a lot. Earnings wallet. Yep, I figured that's what it was. Celgene. So yeah, good chart there. I like that one. That would be in play for me next week, one I'd be looking for. Celgene is one of my favorite biotechs, guys. I believe they're one of the best in breed, but right here, they do not look healthy at all. That said, it's come into support at the bottom of the Bollinger Bands, an area it's held multiple times. If it's going to bounce, this is an area I'd look to see if we can get a bounce off of and try to get long down here. Howard, am I changing it too fast for everybody else? I'm going through charts that people are putting up. They're up for at least a minute, most of them. Trying to get to many charts as you guys as possible. I can slow down a little bit. This is recorded, Howard, so you'll be able to watch it again if you'd like. Anyway, Celgene here, you have support in this area. Yeah, Kevin, we went over Tesla already. I don't know. Biotech overall has been weak, so it's hard for me to say, and I'll show you what I was looking at here. The IBB, I think it'll get mailed out or see you guys afterwards, Don. IBB here, it looked really good, but it was all Regeneron. Regeneron had that big move. So IBB just looks vulnerable. It's back to the 21-day. I don't know. It was a weak volume sell-off yesterday, though, so it wasn't big volume. CMF didn't really come down, so I don't know. I'm not overly concerned about it. It just seems out of play. Usually when they want biotech, they start buying it. They've rotated hard and they're not doing it yet. UUP, the dollar. So honestly, I can look at the technicals for you on the UUP. It's a gappy instrument. It's really less technical and more trades off of what's going on outside forces. And I'm not a Forex trader, guys. I'm not good with money like dollars and currencies like that. So what do I see here looking at it from a technical perspective? It has a big downtrend, right? Rough draw. It had support here. It broke below it. Yep, it does have major Trump-drift work. It's below all the moving averages, including the 200-day at this point. I could tell you that if I look back here, that would be an area that would be support if it wants to go lower, right? And that's all we're trying to do is identify areas for support here. So for me, it looks like a better short than long right now, but I don't understand the geopolitical risks and what happens if the French election this week could probably have an effect upon that too, I would think, right? So be a little bit more careful with that. What was the one I was in? NOK. Northrop Grumman, man, I used to play this all the time and I got away from it and I'm sorry I have. So NOK loves to play from the top to the bottom of the Bollinger Band. And when it hits the top, it's often assigned to get out or go short. And you can see here, up to the top, came down, but held the 821-day. Earnings were good. And yeah, you had a big move on volume. It wasn't big volume, but it was decent volume. CMF indicators turning up on NOK. It's your screen, Joseph. My screen is not flickering here. And it has room to run now to go higher. So I would think NOK can try to run up to this top of the Bollinger Band here, maybe push it a little bit up towards that 251 area, which would also put it really close to this double top area. So let's see if it would come into here and probably get caught up in that and see how it handles that. Thanks, Mark. We do have Tesla recordings. Yeah, Trump KMI. We see a lot of call buying comes into KMI, guys, by the way. It doesn't seem to work very often lately. That said, again, you had a oversold bounce. This name, when it does hit the 30 on the RSI, tends to put in a bounce. You guys see that, right? I'm going to go down and just so I can annotate here for you quickly. Below the moving averages, I'm looking for areas of support. I mean, there's no strong support where it held here. Right now, to me, this looks like it got extended out of the Bollinger Band and snapped back into it here. And if we don't see it changes in energy, I don't think it goes. Maybe this 1920 would be a better area of support, or even in here, not really anything that real strong. This 1920 area to me has more interest, I think, for support at this point. So this looks like just a snapback. I would see if it hits the 8-day, if it sells off. It could be a short on the 8-day. AAOI. Let's go take a look. So I would say absolutely there's more room off of this chart. So first of all, look at the commitment. The first thing you always look at the volume. The volume, you see the commitment on this here, guys? Huge volume. CMF turned way up on it. Volume, commitment, huge move. Honestly, I don't know how it gets there, but on a move like that, without knowing earnings and how good they were, I would expect to try to go and touch and retake this 50, the high here on it. Nice looking chart. It's definitely one I'd look to get long. It may need to flag a little bit, or it might just go. Hard to say. It was huge volume on that one. Kate. So here's the problem. All the retailers have been just sucking it up. And Kate got whacked hard. So everybody sees Kate. So this here we had, so here, Kate, we had the first buyout rumor was down here, right? Popped up, went sideways, then Coach and Coors are in a bidding war for Kate up to here, right? Moved up higher. And then came down that it was only Coach that made an offer, and Coach pulled their offer because that Kate wasn't being realistic. And then we had bad earnings or something along that line in here to go along with it. So at this point, you know, they are a retailer. The last rumor I heard was that they're looking at private equity buying them out here, but there's not a lot of belief in that. For a support standpoint, I mean, this is ugly, but it's oversold. It looks like it's due for a bounce, but it's retail in the high-end sector that's not doing much of anything here. I love to go buying to blood, guys. This is not a chart I'd love unless there was rumor of massive call buying. Got to be honest with you. BKD. Running low on time, so I'm going to go this one real quick. And then I want to give you guys something I caught yesterday afternoon that I want to show your attention to. BKD. Oh, yeah, Brookdale Senior Living. We saw some flow into this one. Now I remember why this name sounded familiar this week. I don't know. They're trying to buy calls on it. It's trying to make it go higher here. It's in a long sideways channel off this low. It looks like a slow mover to me. I don't know, Keith, it's a great question. There are definitely call buyings in it as well. We went over Jakimo already. I want to go and show you something here on a 5-minute chart, on a one-day chart on Micron. This is something I picked up yesterday, and I want you guys to see why I went long this very late in the day. And there was nothing unusual about call buying in Micron yesterday, other than we saw more call buying. So what I want to show you is see how there's no volume yesterday in a 5-minute chart of Micron? You guys all see the Micron chart's up now. Look what happened here. We had an explosion of volume come into the name, into the close. I don't know. My gut's been saying for a while that something's up with this name. They've been buying a lot of calls, long-term calls on it, in the money, out of the money, all over the place. And on a day when it was doing nothing, it was left for dead, all of a sudden, just huge volume came into this name out of nowhere. So put a name on your radar for next week, guys. Maybe somebody's expecting a buyout. Maybe somebody's about to come in and do something. I don't know. It was just strange. It was strange that came into there. I picked up calls on this one, Jazz. I went out and I think I picked up the July 28th, a little before it hit 28. All right. So I wanted to show you that. I'll go back, and you said you want to see CSX. I saw. Let's go grab that real quick. Switch this back, and Visa, and then I'm going to call it a morning here, guys. So CSX. Nice chart. If you're long it, it's not giving you a reason to get out of it, is it, Keith? I'd stay with it. If you're not long it, I don't know if I'd be chasing this move this high up here. Although the chart looks great, obviously it had good earnings here. Looks fabulous. And Visa. So Visa is going to be my last one, guys. I appreciate everybody joining me on Saturday morning, and I hope you've all had a good weekend. So Visa, we saw a ton of call buying down here. It had good earnings. They've come back nibbling a couple times in here. The chart looks great. It got a little heated for a name like Visa, but it doesn't move quick. So if you're going to play it with options, you got to buy time. Holding this 8-day continuously for me is a good sign. So on Monday, if this continues to hold the 8-day, you could look to get long. If it gets weak, I'd see if you can buy it back on the 21-day around 91. Guys, it's a pleasure having you all in here with me this morning. Thanks for giving me an hour of your time on Saturday morning. I hope you guys enjoyed this format. I have another webinar coming up on Thursday. We'll come up with some new topics. We'll always try to do a little bit of chart work because I know you guys like to do that and bring stuff up. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you all throughout the week.